In this real side experience, what would take place involved not just myself, but my brother Gary also. Since it is that which our consciousness comprises of, the idea agreements we have decided upon that affect the body vehicles with the mechanics to decode these idea agreement files into a simulation, then if our experience, that which is effecting from a consciousness, incorporates other individuals, then quite clearly the idea agreements we and the others featuring in our simulation have as the constructed consciousness must be somewhat similar in their design. We are always the deciders, and it is that which we generate ourselves, the ideas as created through the body vehicle mechanics of thought and emotion, the mental and astral vehicles, or the ideas as created by others that we agree to, as both these options render the same results, ideas installed as the consciousness, like files added to your computer, and these ideas then, these agreement files, yield our experience exactly as we have decided it to be. It stands to reason then that a reptilian from the Orion system and a human from the Earth must have quite a discrepancy of agreement files that make up the consciousness, as that which is effected from it, their body types, their positioning in creation, etc., are vastly different. The only files, agreements, that every awareness, experiencing through all the myriad of body forms in a particular creation will share, will be the base state files, the data of the particular simulator all beings within it must have as their consciousness in order to participate in said simulator, like wishing to play a particular computer game. The game's template, the foundation, the stadium must be uploaded to our computers, a template shared by all players of that particular game, and then what takes place within the stadium becomes then a personal choice, and experience between individuals converges or diverges accordingly, and the more idea agreements that correspond between individuals' consciousnesses, the more experience effected from it must do likewise. And so, we can share a simulator with another, we can share a certain star system with another, as the idea agreements continue to correspond all the way to being on the same planet, the same country, the same street, the same house, and to have then individuals in the role as our family members, etc. These agreements are not instantly matched up. Such a process must take lifetimes, and the more we experience with certain individuals the same or similar simulation, the more we forge emotional attachment with the idea that is their consciousness and its affected body forms, and the more we are intertwined with them, karmically speaking, and should this emotional attachment be maintained. So will lifetimes continue to feature these same individuals. Agreements between individuals will be built upon, expressed in various roles in relation to each other, according to how the agreements have effected such to be. For should I agree with an idea, I experience the effect of it, and to lock agreement with another, in whatever form that may take, for even a disdain for others, if clung to, is still establishing a karmic cause and effect, consciousness interlocking a contract. For where we place our focus and attention, the ideas we place these on is another means by which these ideas are uploaded as agreement files, which we then must experience. We can lock ourselves into experience with others if we place a focus upon them, and as such, we can be karmically shackled to those we have created the emotional sensation of hate for as readily as those we have created the sensation, emotional idea of love with. For an individual, a body form is effected from a consciousness of ideas, and as we agree with, place focus and attention on the effected body form, the consciousness that produces it is a part of the package, and we agree then with this consciousness of ideas. For that which is projected, the body form, cannot be without that which projects it, the consciousness. As we agree with the surface effected simulation, we agree with what is behind it, consciousness that has created it. We have uploaded it to our consciousness, and always then is the idea of the individual's consciousness part of our own, a file that renders the individual's body form effected from this uploaded consciousness into our simulated experience. This is how agreement with the surface creations, the simulated front, is agreement to that which created it, and we inadvertently then are opening doors into our experience to all manner of beings, individuals, that we consciously are not aware that we are extending such invitation to, and this is the game of the controllers also, for as we are captivated by their creations, we are agreeing with the controller creators of them, and a controlling consciousness will harbour ideas of a controlling intent inclination, and as with any idea that we agree with, where we experience the nature of it, if we are agreeing with the idea of intentionality to control, this is then our experience, and suddenly we have effected for ourselves situations in which individuals are doing just this, controlling us, or at least potentially can do so, as it's always down to choice. Just because the agreed circumstances dictate that an experience is yielded where I can kill another, I don't necessarily have to do so. And so our relatives, those assuming the roles of those closest to us, must be those we have been kicking around within creation for lifetimes, that as attachment is maintained, as the idea agreements between our consciousnesses continually match up, so is effected circumstances in which said individuals are our siblings, parents, offspring, etc. Even personality, drives, and wants, as these are idea agreements as much as anything else, that become a consciousness installed and personal self-motivating, can become aligned with others. For indeed, very often will families share certain ideas of creation, certain pursuits, or inclinations. My family, for example, all are very, let's say, paranormally orientated. Paranormal really a term expressing that which is beyond the established ideas of normality in the social consciousness, whatever they may be for each respective creational species. As many of my lifetimes previous to this one have been with other species, as it is with everyone really, but through the real side experiences have I had glimpses and verifications that this is so. So it must be that those of my immediate family very likely shared the same other species experiences and lifetimes as I, for as I said, a converging of consciousnesses, the ideas they comprise of, to effect situations where individuals feature very directly in each other's experiences as family members, etc., takes many lifetimes to be so, many shared lifetimes therefore. And is it perhaps so that those far more open to that which is alternative to what are the established earth norms are more likely those that have had such alternative species lifetimes, or at least have had them very firmly ingrained in the consciousness, and so naturally, even if subconsciously, would they appreciate the notion of possibilities beyond the controlled norms, and these subconscious idea files of worlds and species beyond this one would manifest through as individuals with a more exploratory nature, not content to be resigned to the mundane life as according to the controllers, a mundane life presented only for the slaves, what with the reptilian controllers, of course, being an alien species themselves, and with all that they know, etc. And on a recent real side experience I shared, so would my brother Gary and myself be targeted by a group of beings, a distorted body form, that's inclination was to convert others to their own kind, as they sought a certain quality that they deemed a prerequisite for becoming part of their species, and those that lacked it would simply be killed once this lack of quality was determined. Also, many years ago, would I share an experience where my brother Gary and myself were once taken continuously as children between the ages of 6 to 9 on the real side. We would be taken to a strange tower, but would see no more. This was a constant dream, real side experience I always would have through those young years, until they would cease around the age of 9, and only when finding the new presentation would the guides show me the purpose of this tower, as I would revisit it, but be shown what actually took place there. For it was a place of abuse, where the dark forces were instilling fear into vast numbers of children on the real side, and although not visually and consciously recollected, subconsciously would this fear be embedded, as on a dimensional level of ourselves we would have experienced it, and it then would have had its effect on our behaviour, motivations, and actions, just as the fear of death by the hands of the controllers in previous lifetimes carries through as an idea subconsciously into subsequent lifetimes, and has then the individual less inclined to buck the controlling system, although consciously they may not understand why they have such resistance to insurrection. And now, on this recent real side experience, would I be in the presence of my brother Gary again? Oftentimes it is the real guides that assume the roles of older siblings and parental figures. In my case, very often grandparents, now deceased, also. But as I often have mentioned, the real awareness, if stood in the nowness reality of, so we are afforded impressions regarding the ideas behind all that we visually encounter that is simulated on the real side. For the real awareness is a part of this isness everything reality. It is then this one isness everything that is through all consciousness, as a consciousness affects all the variety of a body type and a form in a creation. As such, the ideas that are the consciousness projectors of the body types are readable by this real awareness that we are, and intent, deception, etc. can be determined. We can realize if we are dealing with the genuine individuals, or if perhaps the dark force shapeshifters or the real guides are adopting the forms of others that we know, family members, etc. And the real guides have the recognition of the ears, a recognition that is aside from ideas of creation, a reality and recognition of the isness reality then that can only be determined by the real awareness, that is a part of this isness reality, as the personal self only deals with the ideas, the simulation as effected from these ideas, and not the reality of the ears that is through it all. And so, just as it was with the dark fortress where Gary and I were taken as children, to being hunted by the mysterious creatures intent on converting us and others to their own kind, so it would be the genuine individual, the idea, the creation of Gary as decided via his awareness, that would be in my company again on the real side. For if Gary and I have indeed had many lifetimes together all over creation, as this has culminated in a position here on Earth as a family of siblings, so we have trawled very similar agreements in regards to others also, in regards to others' ability to not only enter our experience as agreement to them would permit, but according to further agreement can said individuals then carry out their intent objectives, be they benign or malign. As I said, those more inclined to explore beyond the controller-provided norms will be targeted by the dark forces naturally, for that is the road that must ultimately lead to learning of the references of the ears, should one follow the breadcrumb trail to its conclusion, and then from there the potential recognition of the true reality, and one less individual who is then propping up the controlled matrix simulator through the redacting of agreement to a controller designed consciousness that effects just this, a maintenance of the controlling simulator status quo, and as the process of awareness and is recognition is a releasing of all agreement to the consciousness, as this is one less cog in the machine that has this simulator under the reptilian's dominion, so such individuals will be automatically targeted, and the earlier the better, as soon as they show signs of exploration beyond the controller's provided human norms. Hence the dark fortress of real side child abuse. And although Gary has no interest in the ears, despite my best efforts to share the references that pertain to it with him, he does still have a fascination and interest with all things otherworldly, and a recognition of that which is taking place on Earth, the depopulation agendas, the reptilian controllers behind the scenes, etc. Although all just ideas in a creation, this is where everyone will begin, determining of what's taking place on Earth, and then potentially determining of the real cure, the recognition of the real awareness that we are, and the ears we are a part of. As such, Gary and I would be targeted again on the real side here. We would find ourselves standing in my recreated physical level street that contains the physical level house we both live in, as I have shared before, as we go about our recognizing of real side symbology and representation. Many elements will be common to all, but we also build up a catalogue of representation unique to us. And for me, if events are shown to be occurring in my street, they are very close to becoming a physical level manifest. Agreements that effect any occurrence are instantly so in reality, but process through as they do to the physical, taking the moments they will. Every idea its own instantly effected movie reel, but the processing of the idea through the body of vehicles into a simulation would be like running the already completed movie reel through the projector, and the personal self must sit through the film. And as the representation goes for me, the closer to home, so to speak, the closer the idea agreement is to being a physical level manifest. And so, an experience occurring in my street, by my house, is as close to home as you can get. But despite being so, agreement can change, or be released, and then we have either switched movie reels, or removed the movie reel altogether. As I stood there with my brother Gary, I would inform him that the dark forces were on their way to kidnap us. In real side experiences, we can remove or alter agreements that will then alter the effects, and what was to be a successful attack or kidnapping can no longer be so, as the ideas that would have effected such are no longer present. But with future views, it's more that we are being shown a heads up of what will or potentially can take place if we maintain the agreements that are effecting such, and then would be our choice to perhaps remove these agreements or keep them, for sometimes we can become more aware through adversity than not, for we may need to draw upon greater creativity to get out of adverse situations rather than remain in our routines, where we can simply draw upon the references we already know in the consciousness. Anything beyond our usual experience demands references we have not collated as to how to handle such, and anything beyond the established consciousness is the real awareness, and so, through doing or dealing with that which we haven't done or dealt with before, comes with it a necessity to access that which is aside from the consciousness of established reaction and action to a routine, and that would be then the real awareness. But failing that, if the real awareness isn't leaned to, if we don't activate awareness through the new challenges and confrontations, and if we have no consciousness, current lifetime memory references to draw from, we are apt then to react emotionally, to panic, etc. Animal instincts kick in. We draw upon the even older subconscious references of survival reactions. Perhaps yes, even as far back as when we had animal body types. So as a future view, we would be shown then what may potentially transpire, agreements as they happen to be, agreements both Gary and I share, secured whenever they may have been, to effect the particulars of what occurred next. As I said, I knew the dark forces were coming, or rather, my real awareness knew and provided the impressions, like affording spoilers to movies as yet unseen, or the stage of the movie we have not yet reached, through the body form processing mechanics of what already is in reality a completed movie. For now, several ominous, black unmarked helicopters would come into view, hovering above the houses of the street, then making their noisy descents to where Gary and I waited. Out would pour military-type individuals, clad in black garments, and rather curiously would they be holding what seemed to be animal leashes. They would proceed to place these around the necks of Gary and myself, like you might with the dogs or other animals. I just took it in my stride, as though recognizing this was just a future view, and I was just to be shown the potentiality of it. And so it was that we were taken to the helicopters, leashed as we were, and transported to another location, a kind of a military base, deep underground, as were my impressions. Curiously, this wasn't for elimination purposes, but as we were somewhat shackled to a set of steel interrogation chairs, so were we hooked up to a technology, and our consciousness was being sifted through, just as you might with files on a computer, as really the consciousness is effectively computer storage for all the ideas we have ever agreed with throughout our time in this simulator, ideas that are the consciousness as it currently stands. And these would include idea files from every lifetime we have ever lived. And indeed, the dark force scientists were rooting through the consciousness in a search for a specific lifetime Gary and myself both shared, where we were a particular species with the ability to transform into anything we desired, like a masterful shape-shifting capability. And like any capability of any species, this is simply what has been decided. The ideas are filed in the species consciousness and become experienced by the species or individual. As such, anything can be experienced in a creation. It's just a case of deciding it, of agreeing with the ideas, and the body form decodes the ideas into the corresponding simulation. Whatever this particular ability was, decided and developed by this species Gary and I once were, was something the dark forces sought for their own controlling purposes. They seemed to have difficulty locating the ideas that pertained to this ability, although they evidently knew they were there, hence the targeting and kidnapping. Ultimately, they attempted to have Gary and I transform into other creatures. In other words, they were trying to have us utilize what would be this latent, long-forgotten species beyond the current lifetime memory vehicle of references, shape-shifting ability, and yet potentially that which could be determined and reignited, as the ideas, the files, were in the consciousness somewhere, and that, should we be able to transform now, it would somehow allow them to pinpoint the idea files on their consciousness sifting computers. Just like an old file long forgotten on the computer, but as we might inadvertently activate it, so what it effects pops up on the screen, and the details then be available to these dark force characters for whatever reasons they required it. There the experience would end, and would overall be another example, as everything in fact is, of what creation is all about. Agreement. Agreement that effects the corresponding simulation, and in whatever way we have decided our agreements and chosen our consciousness to be designed. the ever-presence of the dark forces and the ill-intended, motivated always through a desire to control and dominate, and to utilize all and everything available in creation to that end, even idea agreements specific to certain species that can be used for ill-intended gains, and a verification again of all the endless lifetimes, body forms, and circumstances we all have effected for ourselves over our duration and stay in this simulator, that although most of which we are unconscious of, as each lifetime heralds a new memory body, computer-like filing system, with everything, every prior lifetime, transferred to the subconscious backup filing systems, these real-side experiences do reveal glimpses of some of the species we once were, and what such species were involved in and were about. Fascinating, yes, but we should be cautious that we don't get over-consumed with such. The idea is to get through all ideas of creation after all, that all ideas should be utilized for what they and the simulators were designed for, a tool by which the ears can be recognized through comparison, the parts, the pieces, encapsulated ideas compared to the whole, the isness life is, but a future view warning a possibility also, as creation is certainly not a safe place to be, and with a consciousness generally designed overall as agreement to a control extended to the dark force reptilians in all their forms and expressions, if we don't face the consciousness personal self and release these agreements, which is part of this process of awareness, at any time these characters can and will enter our experience, torture us, use, abuse, or eliminate us.
Well, that was a lot, Kevin, and yes, with your experiences and others lately, we see what's happening, and it's all nonstop. So, yes, to confront this and see if they will make better choices, that's always the challenge. Yes, thank you, Kevin. It's good to see you. I'm glad you're okay. So thank you so much for sharing.
Yes, I woke up thinking when I opened my eyes in the bedroom, I woke up, but I thought I was going to wake up in the bedroom. Instead, I woke up what looked like a desert area. This desert area, I was in the oasis of this desert area, and I could feel that I was sitting down. And what I thought was a golden bumblebee, it was flying around me. And I remember as a child, I used to try to touch bumblebees when they're flying around the flower, just on their back, just lightly touching them. So I went to go touch this golden, which I thought was a golden bumblebee flying around me. And as I positioned my arm and my finger to touch it, I realized that this was not my body that I know. It looked like a sort of chalky color. I didn't know if it was a suit or my skin, and it was very thin. And then I looked down and I saw that my whole body was this chalky white color, and I didn't understand what that was. I didn't understand, am I an alien or what is this? I didn't. And at the same time, which I think was the golden bumblebee was still flying around me. Well, all of a sudden, I then put my attention to what I thought was the golden bumblebee. Instead, it was Rebisar. He was flying around me with this golden aura. And I thought, why is he tiny? But anyways, this time when he went around me, he was he because he was flying a little bit like Superman. But when he went around me this next time, he was flying upside up. And as he's flying upside up, he says, "Wake up!" I thought, what is he saying? Wake up! And then the lucid dream ended. And then about 3 or 4 days later, the memory of the dream came back, and I said, "Oh yeah, I remember wearing the dream, whatever." But instead of panoramic, it triggered a panoramic view. It opened up, and this time I was in the desert, standing up. And I looked at the oasis, and they looked like bushes. So I don't know how tall I was, but I wasn't a normal size human. I could tell, and I could see that I'm wearing this outfit or this skin tone that I didn't understand what it was. But then I popped out of that body, and I was looking at myself. And then all of a sudden, he seemed to be, or I seemed to be, some kind of a commander or captain or something, because he he commanded something, and then all of a sudden, about 15 or 20 beings that looked like me appeared, some feminine, some masculine, and it's like they were waiting for him to, or me to issue orders. Well, he commanded something else, which I did not hear what it was that he commanded, but I could feel he commanded something. And then all of a sudden, they all started having these like belt buckles that had instruments on them, and then on their wrists they had them, and then on their shoulders they had them. On their arms, and I didn't know what that was. But then this watery looking presence to my left, it was floating to my left, and it said something like, "I'm going to be the translator." And it was like a floating water presence, and I could see through it. I could see that the desert was there, but I could see that it was there. And then all of a sudden, this time I did hear what the commander said. He said, "We're going to the earth to save myself." And when he said that, all his people that were there, or whatever they were, said, "What did you say?" And then the second in command came up to him and said, "What did you say?" And then I myself said, "What did you say?" So we all said, "What did you say?" He goes, "Yes, we're going to the earth to save myself." And I thought, well, what? Then I thought, well, how many bodies do I have? I said that without even thinking. And the watery presence said, "Remember, time is an illusion, and everything is here and now." And I said, "Oh yeah, that's right. Time is an illusion." But is this real? I mean, is something coming from somewhere in another planet to rescue me? I don't know. But then I thought, well, if I'm this giant, how big are the ships that are gonna go? So, and then that's when the the panoramic view then closed up. Just thought I share that. Yeah,
Comments?
no insight, because it's almost like incredible to me. I didn't know to believe it or not believe it. But it's only because Rebisar, that looked like which I thought was a bumblebee, said, "Wake up." That's the only feeling that I have, that yes, or that part that this was real. That's the only.
Just bee too. A bunch of bees. The bees were the guides. The other bees too. You see that?
No, I didn't. It was just this him. But I'll share another experience with about the reason I thought it was a golden bumblebee, or he was because when I was living in the apartments, uh, a, a insect came into the apartment, and I went to get the fly swatter thinking it was a fly, and then all of a sudden I noticed that, hey, wait a minute, this insect is glowing gold. Why is an insect glowing gold? And then I noticed that, hey, this is a bumblebee. I could actually almost see that I was I was walking around with a fly swatter, but this time I wasn't going to hit it. I saw that it was a golden bumblebee, and then I was just so amazed. And then all of a sudden, the golden bumblebee went right through the wall. I said, "Oh my goodness, what was that?" So that's why I thought that Rebisar was a golden bumblebee, because I had that experience before.